You're a veterinary practice owner and you're thinking of selling your practice. The real question is, how are you going to know if now is the right time and if your practice is ready? So this is a 12-step criteria that you really must follow because it'll answer all the questions to determine if you are ready to sell. And I'm Dr. Michael. I'm the founder of Transitions Elite. And really, we help practices to sell, have done several $100 million of deals. And this is the exact criteria that we will walk through practice owners to make sure that they have the mindset and the practice that's ready. So let's go ahead and dive in. The first question is the market at or near peak compared to the future? And this isn't backwards looking, really this is forward looking. If the peak is not here or we expect that the values are going to be even higher, well then this might be a very important criteria to wait. But right now I can tell you that now is an excellent time to be able to sell. The buyers are very hungry and it is still an incredible seller's market. So right now, in general, this criteria would be a yes. Next is your practice specifically. Is it financial ready? What does that mean? That means, do you have clean books? Do you have all of the reports that are done? Have you filed your taxes? Do you have all of that organized? And really, does it have everything that's required for a buyer that you can just give them a package and they'll be able to have a really good and solid understanding about your practice? If you don't have this, this is going to grind the due diligence down to a halt and create a huge mess and drop your price by millions if you're over a two-doctor practice. So if you don't, definitely consult with an advisor or a broker. Again, this is exactly what we do. I would highly recommend somebody that does deals rather than somebody that is just an accountant, because you want somebody that's going to position your practice really to be attractive to the type of buyers that are going to be interested in your practice. So assuming that that's now a yes, we're going on to, is the actual practice ready? And so here's, in addition to the financial records, we have, does all the staff have contracts? This will 100% be required by the buyer. Is there an inventory of equipment? And do you have all of the analytics from your practice management software printed and ready so that this again goes into the package? If it doesn't, make sure that that is. If it does, great. Then we're on the yes, we're getting the practice ready to sell. The next criteria is really around your profitability and EBITDA. What many practice owners don't know is that the profit that you report on the taxes isn't actually the profit that the buyers care about, because there are many things that can be pulled out in terms of expenses that will dramatically increase and boost your profitability. Now, don't get me wrong, the buyer will never tell you that you should have taken out those expenses because they want your profit as low as possible. But if you have somebody really smart who's managing this process and helping you through it, they're going to really challenge and justify as many of these one-time or personal expenses out of the profitability. And just as an example, if your profit on paper for tax purposes is $300,000 and the multiple is an 8x, then you'll get $2.4 million for the practice. But if we can boost that from $300,000 to $500,000, you're going to go from $2.4 million of a sale price all the way up to $4 million. So that's an extra $1.6 million in sale price just by this one step. So if you don't have this, you really need to work with a professional that's going to remove the one-time expenses, normalize any compensation, including your compensation as the producing doctor, do any add backs for these one-time expenses that come up, and also to normalize and adjust the facility costs, because you might be choosing to pay yourself more rent or pay yourself less rent depending upon your personal tax situation, and this is going to have a big impact on your profitability. So if you don't have that, very important to do that before you think about selling. If you do have that, great, then we go to the next part. So let's just say you have an LOI in front of you. Now, the key criteria is, do you have multiple buyers that are actively bidding for your practice? In other words, are you looking at multiple LOIs side by side and negotiating these back and forth between the various buyers? If you don't, then you 100% need to source buyers. This is the biggest mistake that veterinary practice owners make. Just think about it. The buyer wants to negotiate with you one-on-one. They want to send you letters. They want to take you out to dinner. They want to meet you and your spouse. And they want you to only have eyes for them, because if you sign that LOI and they're the only LOI, then they have full and utter control over you. And they are working in their own interests, not in you as the seller. So whatever you do not sell your business to one buyer. Never, never, never. You'll literally lose between 30 to 50% of the value of your practice. So if you're in a position where you have an LOI, sitting in front of you, but it's only a single one, then your job is to go out and source additional buyers to create a bidding environment. At Transitions Elite, this is the key factor that drives the value of the practice so substantially. And you probably heard a previous story where the first offer came in at 6.1 million, and then the final offer came in 3 days later, all cash at 12 million for a 4-doctor practice. And it is this bidding environment that creates that dynamic of value increase. And you've worked so hard, you don't want to blow it at the end. And so you want to make sure that you have that bidding structure in place. So assuming you're looking at multiple LOIs side by side that you're able to negotiate against each other. Next, to determine which LOI you're going to sign, you really want to figure out, are you comfortable with the buyer's reputation? So you would talk to other practice owners that have had an experience with this buyer, and this is a cultural fit, which is very important. Are you comfortable with what they're going to do to the legacy of your practice? Do they have the finances ready? And this is why working with somebody that really knows the market and knows the buyers is able to say, oh, these guys, they're looking for capital. They'll just try to tie up your practice and sign you with an LOI and then go out and try to get the money. That's absolutely not who you want to be signing an LOI with. Instead, you want to make sure that the buyer that you are signing with has a reputation doing exactly what they say they're going to do when they buy a practice. And what's powerful working with somebody who's in the mergers and acquisitions in veterinary is that if a buyer in the end of the day tries to play games with one of our clients, we basically call them up and say, hey, if you're going to try to do this, which is the game they play is in the last 3 days when you've told your staff that you're selling, they can say, oh, we offered you 12 million, but now we'll offer you 9 because of all these criteria. And in that situation, what do we say? We say, well, firstly, this is why the practice is worth 12 million. Secondly, I can tell you that this practice owner is not going to accept a penny less. And thirdly, if you do this with this practice owner, we have 5 other practices that are in the process of being sold to you. And we'll tell those other practice owners that this is how you behave, doing this right at the end of due diligence. And guess what? They call the board, they call back, and in that exact story and situation, they said, okay, we'll do the 12 million. So it's extremely important that you don't engage with buyers that don't have this proven track record. And you get the added bonus if you're working with somebody that has multiple deals, that they have this accountability that you just don't have as a single practice owner. The next criteria is really the earnouts. And this is a very important sticking point. And is this acceptable to you? The structure of earnouts have been getting more complex because a lot of these buyers have bought practices and some of them have mismanaged them, and those are the ones that we definitely stay away from. And so with these buyers, they are now creating 4-year earnouts. And it's not just on a revenue target, like you have to grow 5% to get the earnout. It's also 5% growth and a labor efficiency ratio. And now you cannot control that as the practice owner. And basically it seems innocent. Oh, there's 2 criteria, but those 2 criteria are going to make the difference between you actually getting the earnout and you not. And sometimes these earnouts can be a substantial part of the deal depending upon the risk that they perceive in the practice. And this is why it's so important to have multiple bidders, because you can negotiate against the bidders, the multiple buyers, to make sure that you structure the earnout in as an attractive way as possible for you as a practice owner. So ensure that's got a single metric, not double metric. So again, just revenue, not revenue, and labor efficiency. Make sure that it's a maximum of 3 years. I don't want you stuck in that practice for more than 3 years. And also make sure that the targets they should be give me targets. The design of a good earnout is that the practice isn't going to go down, into the toilet. That's very understandable for the buyer, but it shouldn't be stretch goals that if you don't achieve it, you won't be able to actually sell the practice. So if you own the property, this becomes the next key part of the deal. It's very important that your rent is going to be at or above market rates, because this property is going to be an annuity for you. And the value of the property is going to be largely determined by the rent that you receive. So for example, a recent deal, one of the buyers offered the seller, the practice owner, $24,000 a year for rent. And the rent should always be triple net leases. So basically they pay all the expenses and you just get the rent money. The other buyer offered the practice owner $75,000 a year for rent. And so if you do the math, it came to about $480,000 in terms of a difference over a 10-year period between those 2 scenarios. So extremely substantial. And you're likely going to want to hold on to this real estate for the long term because it's a fabulous investment. You have a rock solid tenant, it's a triple net lease, and this will also defer your tax basis instead of having such a large sum come from selling the real estate at the same time. So this will be a very important criteria to negotiate in the LOI. Then finally, if the rent is at or above the market levels, you're now into the letter of intent. So there will be several other key points in the letter of intent that will be negotiated, again, especially if you have multiple letters of intent. And finally, if you're comfortable and you fit all these criteria and they all hit yes, then you are able to, in good faith, go ahead and sign that LOI. And the final bonus tip is once that LOI is signed, there is a shot clock. And that means that you are in a race to be able to finish that due diligence as quickly as possible. For our clients, we, no matter what, will get it done within 120 days unless something really blows up in the practice that is unexpected. Why? Because the buyer is never going to offer you more for your practice. But if anything changes, your revenue drops, the veterinarian leaves, anything, clients start to drop off, they're going to come back and they're going to renegotiate down. And now they are in a position of power. You as the practice owner, seller, you're tired. Maybe your staff even knows that you're selling and they know this. So once we sign the LOI with a reputable buyer, with the ideal situation, then we go as quickly as we can to close the deal and get those funds wired into your account. So if you're a practice owner and you're wondering, well, geez, I don't know if I'm really ready or not, or where do I start? I've asked our team, we put aside some time for a free practice value estimate. That way you're able to speak with one of my senior advisors, and I work closely with them. I review all of their notes. And so you'll be able to get really this step-by-step criteria applied to your practice. And they might very well say, hey, you know what, now is not the time. Or they might say, wow, where you are, now is a peak time. I know several buyers that are just absolutely hungry and they're competing against each other for your local area. And now is absolutely the time. So if you really would like that help, go ahead and click the link below and just fill it out. We'll jump on a call together. And otherwise, if you like this video, go ahead and click like or subscribe. You'll get them in the YouTube feed. And I'm going to be producing a lot more of these for you, for the veterinary practice owner. So I hope this is helpful for you.